consent that further proceedings on the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Last election cycle, Americans elected a 50-50 Senate, a closely divided House, and a president who promised unity and moderation. What have Washington Democrats done in response? They've set out trying to tax and spend our country into oblivion. They've handed the keys to domestic policymaking to Chairman Sanders and some socialist House members. In the spring, they passed a massive inflationary liberal spending bill that Democrats bragged was the most liberal bill in American history. Now this week, just a few months later, they want to start ramming through trillions more that will make that disaster look like child's play. They call it $3.5 trillion in spending. Nonpartisan experts say those plans would more likely cost Americans about $5.5 trillion. Trillions more borrowing and trillions more spending when inflation is already sticking American families with higher costs. New permanent welfare with no work requirements when small businesses are already struggling to find workers. Sweeping amnesty when the southern border is already in crisis. Green New Deal regulations when Americans' gas prices have already shot up, crushing tax hikes for family businesses and farms as they fight to recover from the recession. So apparently, tragedy and comedy really are two sides of the same coin. The tragedy is that Democrats want to inflict all this pain on middle-class families. Here's the comedy. They won't let Republicans have any say in this monstrosity, but they want our help raising their credit card to make it happen. Democrats want Republicans to help them raise the debt limit so they can keep spending historic sums of money with zero Republican input and zero Republican votes. So imagine a friend tells you he's flying off to Las Vegas to blow all of his money. He doesn't care that you think it's irresponsible. You aren't invited to come along, but he wants you to co-sign a loan for him before he leaves. Now, I understand the administration sent out the Treasury Secretary to argue that historically both parties have addressed the debt ceiling together. Of course, it's our Senate Democrat colleagues who have no interest in what is historically normal. Their borrowing and spending are historically abnormal. Democrats keep boasting about how wild and revolutionary their partisan vision is. So our friends across the aisle should not expect traditional bipartisan borrowing to finance their non-traditional reckless taxing and spending spree. That's not how it's going to work. Democrats have all the existing tools they need to raise the debt limit on a partisan basis. If they want 50 lockstep Democratic votes to spend trillions and trillions more, they can find 50 Democratic votes to finance it. If they don't want Republicans' input, they don't need our help. It couldn't really be simpler, and it really couldn't be more fair. Besides, I thought my colleagues were literally thrilled to present another reckless taxing and spending spree to the American people. I thought middle-class families were supposed to be delighted with their socialist shopping list. So shouldn't Democrats be proud to own all the debt it requires? Our colleagues seem confident that Chairman Sanders' vision is worth sticking our kids and grandkids with a massive bill. They deserve to have total ownership of that decision. Now, Mr. President, on a totally different matter, when the Biden administration announced its reckless retreat from Afghanistan in April, I made my opposition perfectly clear. But I wasn't alone one of the most prominent liberal editorial boards in the country, responded to the president's move with this headline: Biden takes the easy way out of Afghanistan. The likely result is disaster. The administration's own top intelligence experts made a similar prediction. Quote, the Taliban is likely to make gains on the battlefield, and the Afghan government will struggle to hold the Taliban at bay if the coalition withdraws its support. The director of the CIA told senators that withdrawal would make his agency's job harder. And needless to say, the last time a Democratic administration tried a hasty retreat from the region offered a cautionary tale. Reality was clear to everyone but the very top of the Biden administration. From their bizarre choice of a symbolic September the 11th deadline to the absence of any concrete plan, the administration's decision appears to have rested on wishful thinking and not much else. The notion that Afghan forces might be able to stop the Taliban's advance with only over-the-horizon support, that's proven to be wishful thinking. That the Taliban might respond to the diplomatic plying of the international community, wishful thinking as well. As the administration's withdrawal proceeds at full speed, expert warnings have become deadly realities. The Afghan people, their democratic institutions, are literally being ripped apart by murderous theocrats. Nearly 1,000 Afghans have reportedly been killed already by Taliban death squads in the province of Kandahar alone. In the last 2 months, the militants have taken more territory in the last 2 months than they've held since 2001. And in just the last 4 days, the Taliban have raised their flag over six provincial capitals, including northern cities far from the group's historic base of power. Militants are engaged in a campaign to assassinate crucial members of the remaining resistance, from military pilots to top government ministers. All across the country, women and children are already suffering in particular. One recent report claimed Taliban militants beat a child to death because his father, listen to this, beat a child to death because his father served in the Afghan armed forces. What's more, the prospect of an emboldened al-Qaeda capable of threatening not only the region, but the American homeland is now a near certainty. No matter what the Biden administration tells itself about the state of that threat today. And yet, the State Department still mouths unbelievably naive platitudes like, quote, expectation is that the Taliban will work toward political settlement. Even as the Taliban spokesman asserted that the most recent attacks are just, quote, the beginning of retaliatory operations. So, Mr. President, does this sound like a group committed to peaceful means? Goodness sake, get a grip. This willful denial isn't just costing Afghanistan, it's already costing the American people and our interests. It's forced loyal coalition partners to second guess whether we can be trusted to finish what we start. It's led brave Afghans who earned promises of assistance to fear they'd be abandoned amid our incompetent, completely incompetent retreat. It's even left overwhelmed embassy personnel to urge remaining Americans in Afghanistan to leave immediately by any means available. So, Mr. President, this morning I attended a classified briefing from administration officials about current conditions on the ground. Look, needless to say, the briefers faced some tough questions about an entirely avoidable situation that is deteriorating faster every single day. And they'll certainly face more as global terrorists feed from the rise of an extremist government in Afghanistan. I, for one, have warned repeatedly that those who seek to harm us, our friends, and our interests, simply do not abide by our political timetables. They do not care if our leaders get tired of the task at hand. And this is not what victory looks like.